Between August 1942 and February 1943, the Battle of Stalingrad unfolded as the German Sixth Army and its allies clashed with the Russian defenders in a fierce struggle for control of the city. This epic conflict stands as one of the most devastating and significant events in the history of World War II. The Red Army emerged victorious, defeating the Nazis and rescuing Stalingrad, the city situated on the Volga River, which is now known as Volgograd. However, the price both sides paid was devastating. Over 1.1 million Russian soldiers lost their lives, while approximately 800,000 Axis troops suffered casualties, either through death, injury, disappearance, or capture. In addition, approximately 40,000 civilians trapped in Stalingrad tragically lost their lives during this pivotal battle, which played a significant role in shifting the course of the war. Many of the corpses on both sides ended up in mass graves, and identifying the bodies was, and remains, a huge problem. Bombs would explode, and there was no way of telling who the dead were. Anatoly Kozlov, who had been a Russian tank commander, told CBC News in 2018. He died in 2019 at 97. Even today, more than 80 years later, searchers continue to find bodies from the bloody fight. Room to room. According to the Modern War Institute, the Battle of Stalingrad was characterized by some of the most high-intensity urban combat in history, which resulted in truly unimaginable levels of death and destruction. According to a story that was published in February 1943 by the Chicago Daily News, journalist David M. Nichol stated that the struggle had been going on for several months and that it consisted of interior fighting, much of it at night, room to room, hallway to hallway. The conflict left the city in ruins, and the number of dead people accumulated. The reason that the number of fatalities was so high was due to the fact that Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin, two of the most notorious dictators in the history of the world, issued orders to cease retreat. Frost-blackened corpses in the grotesque attitudes in which they fell or were pushed aside into some convenient trench seem a perfect natural accompaniment for this mad scene, Nichol wrote in his manuscript. Maria Roklina, a Russian military medic who was a teenager at the time of the conflict, noted that the ground was incapable of being buried due to the freezing temperatures of that winter. According to her recollection, corpses were piled up, as reported by National Geographic. There was no place to bury them. Corpses littered the streets. The civilian population of Stalingrad endured appalling conditions on a daily basis throughout the siege that lasted for several months. The Volga River, which was the only supply of drinking water, became blocked with dead bodies, and the streets were covered with them. It was common practice for individuals to simply throw bodies aside, pack themselves with water, and, if they were fortunate, boil the water before consuming it. The bank of the river was covered in dead fish mixed with human heads, arms and legs, all lying on the beach, remembered Konstantin Duvanov, a Russian soldier. The beach was covered in human bodies. They were the remains of people who were being evacuated across the Volga when they were bombed. Clay was the only food that some of the people could afford, but even then, they had to use extreme caution. My mother would throw away the bits of clay that were soaked in blood and then take the rest and filter it through a piece of cloth, Valentina Savilyeva, who was a youngster during the war, recalled. She would do this until the clay was completely clean. Mass graves. The German army was not selective about the locations where they buried their fallen friends by the time December 1942 rolled around. This was because they were not only facing the Red Army, but also famine and the harsh winter in Russia. One of the reporters for the United Press, Henry Shapiro, made the observation that sometimes they haven't time to dig individual graves. Because of the enormous number of people who had died, I occasionally came across mass graves. Following a counter-offensive by the Red Army that had encircled the German troops and their allies, The Germans and their allies surrendered to the Russians at the beginning of February 1943. In the aftermath of the combat, the Russians hurled the dead Germans into mass graves that they had hurriedly excavated. These Germans had not been buried by their own side throughout the conflict. According to a statement made by a spokeswoman for the German War Graves Commission to the Daily Mail in 2018, due to the threat of epidemic at that time, there was a rush to remove the countless corpses of men and animals as soon as possible. Earth holes, gorges and streams became mass graves. The motherland calls. The majority of the deceased from the Red Army were also buried in mass graves. There is a massive monument of a woman holding a sword in one hand and her other arm extended out in front of her that is located on the highest point in the city, which overlooks the Volga River. This monument, which is 20 stories tall and is known as the Motherland Calls, conceals the bones of 35,000 soldiers. In close proximity, the Hall of Heroes is a memorial that honors the Russian troops who lost their lives. It features an eternal flame, the names of almost 7,000 deceased individuals etched in stone, and 4 Russian soldiers who are guarding the memorial. There is also a memorial dedicated to the unknown soldier, representing all those who died without being identified. "Your name is unknown," reads the plaque via UNESCO. "Your deed is immortal, eternal glory." But even today, the remains of soldiers from both the German and Russian armies continue to turn up. Every year in the former Stalingrad, on average 3 to 4 mass graves are found, the representative of the German War Graves Commission said. Bodies are still being found. In 2018, Russian workmen who were laying pipe in Volgograd discovered a burial that contained more than 1,800 German soldiers and their horses who had died during the conflict. This was by no means the first discovery of its kind. Every summer, searchers continue to find several hundred bodies at the enormous combat site where the entire conflict took place. They occasionally make use of metal detectors in an effort to locate items such as cutlery that may have the names of the soldiers scratched on them. It is hoped that this would lend a hand in recognizing those who have passed away. There are still a lot of relatives who have hope to find their relative, to know anything about where they died or how they died, commented Mikhail Shuvarikov, a volunteer searcher in 2018. There are a lot of people who are looking for their relatives. As a result of excavations and the possibility of identification, a significant number of the remains are sent to the Rososhka military cemetery, which is located nearby. The dead of both the German and Russian wars were laid out on the same sacred ground, which had been the site of a battle between the two countries more than 8 decades previously. We hope you liked this video. Watch another video here.